Hi, and welcome to Gym with Gwynne. I'm Oliver Gwynne, and this is where we talk about data marketing and philosophy. This week, I'm looking at layering data. How can we overlap different data points to give a complete picture of, in my example, churn? So something that we don't like, customers leaving, because obviously we want them to stay with us forever and give us all of their money. I mean, we want to serve them and serve their needs. So the first thing I'm going to look at is life cycle stage. Now, you should have life cycle stages in your CRM or in your customer journey flow, but I suspect a lot of you don't, or I suspect a lot of you have too complicated life cycle stages, and I'll come back to that. But when we think about churn and our relationship with customers, we think of it like a first date. At the very start, if we do something wrong, it's quite high, the risk that they will churn because things didn't go right, we didn't meet their expectations, and they're not going to give us a second chance like a bad first date. And so the risk of them leaving is quite high. And if we serve those customers over time, it goes down and down and down and down. And then naturally, sort of 5 to 10 years in, there might come a point where they just churn anywhere. They just try to a new provider, or they try a new service. Now, a lot of businesses will have a churn built in to their product. It could be, for example, that you're selling nappies, and you know that hopefully as a child gets to a certain age, they stop needing nappies, and that's when they will stop using your product. But even there, if we understand the likelihood of when they started buying nappies and when they're going to end, there comes a good selling point, because maybe the next child is going to be born and that's our chance to upsell at that point. Or we could wait 20 years and maybe they will need some adult diapers, So if you understand where customers are in the journey, there's always a chance to win them back. And that's why life cycle stage is really, really important. What people tend to do is they overcomplicate their life cycle stages. They put way too many stages, or they add non-objective fields in there, like hot leads, cold leads, all of this kind of stuff. And so it's very difficult to know where somebody is, what communication they're getting, or is this person cold leave them completely? And does that relate to sales, or does that mean that the marketing team still sends them an email? If they've opted out of email from marketing, should the sales team still call them when they've got permission to do that? All this kind of thing becomes very, very complicated. And so it's very important to have very clear life cycle stages that are going to be suitable for your business for the long term and should relate closely to the product that you've got, because then that can help you identify when people are going to leave. The next point to consider is the segment that customer is in. So segmentation, I love it. It's all about dividing people into smaller audiences and commonalities, shared characteristics. And that allows you to sort of understand what brings people into the category, what their relationship is to your brand and the needs that they've got. And that also highlights why they are likely to leave, because the reason that somebody comes into your category is the most likely reason that they are also leaving. If you are a cheap restaurant and your prices go up, then guess what? You're not fulfilling the needs that they originally had. And so they're going to leave. The next data point would be customer lifetime value. Talk about this all the time. It's really important. If you understand who has a high likelihood that they will earn you a lot of money, if you understand the commonalities between those people and what makes them high lifetime value customers, then you know which are the customers you want to bring back. You want to spend the time, you want to give them a discount, you want to have your salespeople call them. Maybe you even have to take them out to dinner if that's the sort of industry that you're in. So lifetime value is really, really important in understanding where you should spend the time. When you couple that with the needs and motivations that you've got from your segmentation, and when you couple that with the life cycle stages, these things already start to film a much fuller picture on churn. The next one is something that I often see left in its own silo, a big data gap, and that's customer service. So customer service often sits over here, and it's not tied into CRMs or ERPs or whatever it is. And I think it's because different teams look at those things. I think the CRM tends to be the domain of the marketing team or the sales team or whatever, and customer service tends to be in its own little ball. Now, obviously, in some cases, it can be difficult because the customer service can be anonymous, and so you don't have a one-to-one attribution between the two. But in most cases, if you do a little bit of digging, If you've got a service where you have to have some sort of login or you have to ask the customer's name, then there will be a fuzzy match to the customer there. And if that data isn't integrated back into your marketing tools, then somebody who's had a recently bad experience, you might be trying to upsell them, and that would be the worst possible time to do that. So make sure that you've got your Zendesk or whatever it is to help customers with support, no matter the medium, if it's on phone, if it's online, if it's with chat. Make sure that data is integrated into the rest of everything else, because then you can start to see commonalities in problems arising. And when people churn, you've got more of a heads up on that. The next data point to consider is marketing data. So how do you communicate with people? Most people watching this only have a few options. If you're B2B, you've probably got email, maybe you've got phone, and maybe you've got LinkedIn. And quite often you don't have all three. For most B2C people, you don't have that. Maybe all you've got is email. And so you have very limited ways in which to contact your customers. But even so, if you know that a particular customer does not open your emails on a regular basis, you know that it's less likely that sending them another email to try and get them to stop leaving is going to have any effect. And so maybe instead of doing that, if there's some sort of leaving process that you build in, you could then offer them something at that point directly through the website, through whatever it is that you're serving them through the app. So, hey, an email's not going to work, but maybe a push notification says, hey, please don't leave, we'll give you 10% off. That would work. And you can determine that by seeing who are more active, who's reading your emails versus who is active on the app, and vice versa. You always want to try and communicate people in the medium that they prefer. And I know sometimes that has an additional cost associated with it. If somebody prefers to phone you for support every time, and you think, God, that costs us a lot of money versus an email. But try, if you don't want to tell them to leave, try and communicate with them in the way that they prefer. Last but not least, transactional data. And I'm thinking mostly here about product usage, this kind of thing where they have a baseline of activity and suddenly that dips for whatever reason. The problem is that a lot of people apply a one rule for many people. They don't take into account that people use your service or your website or buy from you in different patterns. And so they just do things like, okay, we're an app. We want people to sign in every day. So anybody who hasn't signed in for a week, low engaged, we need to win them back. But there'll be loads of people who just want to look at your app every week, maybe. That's completely normal to them. And so they're getting all these deals and offers to get them back. And maybe you're cannibalizing that customer. Maybe they don't actually need that at all. And instead, what you should be doing is looking for unusual behavior. So if you've got the data around what is normal for people, you can then flag at scale, okay, Oliver normally comes to the website every day, and now he's only coming once a week. This is unusual. He needs to be intervened before he churns. And similarly, somebody who is only once a month and then comes back every month or misses 1 month, don't worry about it. That's normal. They've only missed 1 month. Maybe we'll take another month to intervene on that person. So you can see, even with this short example, when we start to layer all the different data points, we get a really good picture on customers and their behavior. And then we can start to predict when somebody's going to churn ahead of time because we've got the flag. Now, a little note about predictive analytics, because I feel like I have to explain this quite a lot. What is that? Basically, what it is a match, and it's matching you to the behavior of people who also did that action. In our case, churn. So it's looking at the people who churned. It's saying quite often they did X, Y, and Z, and that means that they're going to churn. And then it applies a score to that person and how similar they are to all these people who left. And that's why it's important to factor in things like segments, to factor in things like lifetime value. Because if you just do that for everybody, the score will be quite different and you'll waste time on the wrong people. So by layering your data in your model, by building it interoperably, I can never say that word, then you can get much better insights and your data model will become a lot more accurate, because then instead of matching you broadly to everybody who left, you're matching people in the same segment who joined in the same period and have certain lifetime value. And so that was my example of layering data for a more complete picture on customer churn. But all of these things have a downside. And the downside is that in order to get all of your data into one place, it takes a lot of time. You need to extract the data. You need to define what it is you're extracting first. Then you need to extract the data. You need to model the data, often mixing sources together to get one picture. And then you need to feed that data into your CRM. And all of these things take time, cost money. You need data professionals to do that. Um, and so when thinking about where do you start, instead of going, everything is going to take 6 months and finally we'll have a complete picture on churn, think about what are the biggest hints? What are the answers that are going to get you to the source of the truth most quickly? Think about what's the number one thing that people say through support when they leave, when they fill out your survey, when they leave, and focus on them to begin with. And then over time, you can integrate all your different data sources, build up that more robust picture. And quite often you'll find something different than what people tick on the box as they're leaving. That's been my thought for this week. Thanks for tuning in to Gin with Gwynne.